Good evening. I'm Rachel Maddow in for Keith Olbermann. This is Thursday, July 10th, 117 days until the 2008 presidential election. The next time you need to take out a second mortgage to fill up at the gas pump, don't worry. Any pain you might be experiencing is apparently all in your mind. And if that second mortgage turns out to be a subprime mortgage and you just happen to lose your home, again, no worries. Any homelessness you might encounter will also be just psychological. Our fifth story on the countdown, one of John McCain's oldest and closest economic advisors, former Senator Phil Gramm, has told Americans to stop whining about the U.S. economy, which he says is only suffering from a mental recession. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. Senator Gramm strikes again, the man who helped write McCain's policy on the mortgage crisis while he was being paid by some of the country's largest financial firms to oppose re-regulation of the mortgage industry. The same man who you curse at the gas pump for having brought us the Enron loophole. That guy now wants you to suck it up and stop whining. In an interview with the Washington Times, the Texas Republican said, quote, "You've heard of mental depression? This is a mental recession. In other words, it's all in your head." And even when a politician believes this, Gramm says there is no way he or she can ever admit it.
But no politician can talk about, well, things are not as bad as you think, because that sounds like they don't care. And yet you just hear this constant whining, complaining about our loss of our competitiveness, America in decline. We've never been more dominant. We've never had more natural advantages than we have today. We've sort of become a nation of whiners.
Senator McCain responded today that Phil Gramm does not speak for him, even if he does write some of his economic policy.
I don't agree with Senator Gramm. I believe that the person here in Michigan that just lost his job isn't suffering from a mental recession. I believe the mother here in Michigan, around America, who is trying to get enough money to educate their children isn't whining. America is in great difficulty, and we are experiencing enormous economic challenges as well as others. Phil Gramm does not speak for me. I speak for me. So I strongly disagree.
Senator McCain also tried to joke away a question about how significant Gramm was in forming his economic plan and whether Gramm could be Secretary of the Treasury in a McCain administration.
I think Senator Gramm would be in serious consideration for ambassador to Belarus, although I'm not sure the citizens of Minsk would welcome that. Go ahead in the back.
You know, I can never get anybody to laugh at my Belarus jokes either. No laughs for McCain there. And we're still waiting for him to answer the question about how much of his economic plan was written by Phil Gramm. The Democrat in the race adopted a light tone in going after McCain for his economic advisor's comments.
A nation of whiners. Now, this comes after Senator McCain recently admitted that his energy proposals, for the gas tax holiday and the drilling, will have mainly, quote, psychological benefits. I want all of you to know that America already has one Dr. Phil. We don't need another one when it comes to the economy. We need somebody to actually solve the economy. It's not just a figment of your imagination. It's not all in your head.
Here's McCain with his perhaps even lamer comeback.
Whether it be offshore drilling, whether it be nuclear power, whether it be any of the efforts we need to make. He is. You're talking about Dr. Phil. He's Dr. No. He's Dr. No on energy.
Dr. Phil, Dr. No. Wow, lots to talk about with MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, who's also a senior editor at Newsweek magazine. Hi, John.
Hi, Rachel.
Phil Gramm does not speak for John McCain, but he does get to help write some of John McCain's economic policies. So what's the important difference here?
Well, first you have to understand that Phil Gramm and John McCain have been friends for 25 years. They met in the House of Representatives, formed a really close bond in the early 1980s. Then in 1996, I remember going to a Florida straw poll, and John McCain was handing out literature for Phil Gramm. He was his choice to be the Republican nominee in 1996 when Bob Dole ended up prevailing. And I remember, saying to McCain, why do you really think Phil Gramm should be president of the United States, Senator? Because Gramm had a reputation as being kind of a nasty piece of work in the Senate. And McCain made the case to me and a lot of other people at the time that he thought Gramm was basically a genius particularly on economic policy. And he and his wife, Wendy Gramm, who was head of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission for years, they are very, very involved in this deregulatory environment, Rachel, that has done a lot of damage in recent years. Then going into this campaign, they were very centrally involved in drafting John McCain's economic plan. So he could try to distance himself from Phil Gramm, but it's really not going to work if you look at the facts.
And that is really the most important question here. Not whether this was a gaffe, but how much this represents about McCain's economic thinking. I mean, in January, McCain himself said the fundamentals of the economy were strong and that our economic problems were psychological. That's the word he used. In April, he said it again. Our economic problems are psychological, so we might need a psychological boost to fix them. In June, he was still with that line, saying the gas tax holiday would offer a psychological impact rather than a real one. I know that McCain is distancing himself from Gramm here because of Gramm sort of getting in trouble. But is Gramm actually revealing what the McCain campaign believes about the economy?
Well, I think you could take John McCain at his word that he feels your pain if you're hurting in this economy. But the problem is really an ideological one. If people at the middle and lower end of the economic spectrum are an abstraction for you, if you really don't know and deal with such people very often in your daily lives, as some of these Republican politicians do not. I don't want to necessarily include McCain in that, because when you're campaigning, you do run into these folks. But a lot of people like Phil Gramm, they don't really know anybody who's got much of a problem, or maybe their net worth went from $1 million to $900,000. So they're not exactly hurting. And so for them, all of this is just, a series of abstractions, numbers that you might see on the page. It's not real for them. So it's easy for them to take refuge in their supply side economics and to just kind of write all of us off, write all the people who are suffering off as a bunch of whiners, as he said.
You compare this to the amount of coverage and the continuing coverage that Obama's bitter line got about Obama being some sort of elitist and out of touch, and it's a pretty striking contrast. Jonathan, how long do you think that Gramm lasts as McCain's economic advisor now? Do you think that he actually gets sort of cast out from the kingdom? You think he's gone?
That happened today. It was Phil who? You could see that it took, to use the top cliche of the season, he threw Gramm under the bus in about 5 seconds. So you're not going to be hearing much about Phil Gramm anymore, but it will be interesting to see whether McCain does get tagged with not really being very sensitive to some of the hurt that's out there right now.
Jonathan Alter of MSNBC and Newsweek, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rachel.